What's going on, guys, and welcome on in. Today let's talk about must pull 5-star artifacts. Kind of similar to my must pull 5-star units video we did recently, but instead of going over like a whole tier list sort of rating each and every individual artifact, I kind of want to cater this more towards the must pull for new to mid game players. So artifacts that you don't want to miss out on. If you ever see them in the mystic shop, in the powder shop, you want to chase these as hard as you can if you are a beginner player. So without further ado, let's get into it. Guys, first on the list, the god tier artifact. This one will go above all the rest, so let's begin with it. I'm sure some of y'all already know what I'm going to cover, but more so than ever since the dawn of the game, Rod of Amaryllis, I think, deserves to be a cut above the rest. This 5-star Soul Weaver artifact is a meta breaker, a game breaker for PvE and PvP. For new players, it'll enable your Soul Weavers like your Montmorency, which is a very strong beginner specialty change unit. Her going from Magraha's Tome or any other random 4 or 3-star artifact, upgrading to Rod means her burst healing potential goes through the roof. Not only that, units like DN, if she's coming back this winter, if you're a new player and you end up picking up DN, this is a very strong artifact for her. Almost every single Soul Weaver can make use of this, with the exception of, let's say, someone like Ruel probably wants a different style artifact, or the auto attack, the more niche Soul Weavers. But Acades, Montmorency, DN, even Tamarin, all can make great use of this in both PvE and PvP. So make sure if you ever see this, guys, I highly advise that you pick up at least one at all costs. And if you can, actually, I would even suggest pick up 2. And if maybe you're mid game to late game, try to pick up 3, because for things like Guild Wars, you're going to want multiple copies. One for each of your teams, and also another one that you can start max limit breaking for the more intensive situations like real-time arena, RTA. Alright, so that's Rod of Amaryllis. We're going to put that kind of in its own tier. The #1 universal must pull artifact, Rod of Amaryllis. Next up, guys, let's go down to tier 1. So this will be right below Rod. And this is also, I'm going to go over 4 artifacts or so that are kind of a cut above the rest of the entire pool. So I have Rod of Amaryllis at the very top. I have tier 1, which will be 4 artifacts we're going to talk about next. And then I have a tier 2, which is kind of the very good artifacts that are above the garbage artifacts. I'll write some stuff on the screen to kind of highlight it and organize it a little better for y'all, okay? So let's go over the next set. I'll consider these tier 1s for the beginner to mid game must pull list. The next up we have, sure, a lot of y'all have maybe experienced this in your new adventures into PvP. We have Abyssal Crown. Besides having god tier artwork, this is probably one of the best PvP artifacts in the game by far. It has the potential on its own to sort of steal games out of nowhere. It sets the momentum if you go first. If you have a turn 2 dizzy, it can steal a match back. It's just absolutely insane with the way artifacts work on how they can proc on misses. This artifact is honestly just too powerful at the moment. That being said, it has no real uses in PvE, as you don't really need to go for stuns, and if you do, a lot of the bosses or so, and let's say Abyss, usually have stun immunity. But for PvP, it is an absolute godsend, a must pull. It's the reason why mages are so strong in general, especially AoE mages. So I highly advise that if you play PvP at all, doesn't matter if it's arena, Guild Wars, or RTA, you need to pick up one, and honestly, you want to try to max limit break this bad boy. From 12 to 24% is huge. Even at level 15, it's good enough if you say you have a fast AoE spamming mage like Dizzy, but really you want to get that max proc to really unlock its degenerate potential. It's a very strong artifact that a lot of people clamor for nerfs, and expect your opponents to get very upset and possibly rage quit at how obscene this thing can be. So one last time, one of the strongest artifacts in the game for PvP only, but in PvP it has the potential to both secure and steal games away. It's just, it is just too powerful at the moment. The other very, very powerful artifact that can also steal matches out of nowhere, guys, also starts with an A. Let's talk about it real quick. It is, yes, Alexa's Basket. This artifact actually on introduction used to be way, way worse. One of the worst artifacts in the game. Got buffed and is now the premier, in my opinion, the premier thief artifact overall. Of course, if you have like evasion-based thieves and things like that, there's things like Moonlight Dreamblade and Violet Talisman. But for your DPS thieves, think Arbiter Vildred, think Tempest Sorin, possibly even like Kayron, Assassin Sid. You can use it on almost any thief, realistically. It is just very, very powerful, and just like Abyssal Crown, has the chance at stealing matches. More so on units like I highlighted, like Arbiter Vildred and Tempest Sorin, because of the way they work. Take Arbiter Vildred, for example. At max proc, Alexa's Basket has a 40% chance to give greater attack up. Now, RB gets that on his first turn, and then when you kill him, he has, unless you somehow manipulate the CR with an extra turn mechanic or such, he usually takes the first turn after his revive and has another chance at a second follow-up greater attack Alexa's Basket. I think this is partially why RB has remained on top despite getting so many counters to him. His own kit is obviously insanely powerful, but Alexa's Basket is what sort of makes sure he stays the top oppressive unit. With Tempest Sorin, just the fact that she cycles turns so quickly and her burst damage potential on turn 1 is insane. She has a low cooldown on S3, and like I said, the cycling means she can potentially get multiple Alexa's Baskets, which will definitely secure the round or the match per se. Definitely another one you want to max limit break, guys, just like Abyssal Crown. Now this is for PvP. You could use it on PvE, although the RNG mechanic usually means that things like Portrait are just as good, if not better, if you're just fodder farming, or if you're doing an extended fight, usually Daydream Joker. There's usually better artifacts for PvE, but it does have potential there as well. If you want to max limit break one, feel free to use it there too, but primarily the use is PvP. So save up that powder, guys. If this ever comes back to the shop, if you ever see it in the Mystic rotation, even getting at plus 15, and if you, let's say you have an Arbiter Village or another thief that can make great use of this, definitely pick one up and slap it on, because it is absolutely insane. Must pull for PvP. Alright. Next one we're going to talk about. This one is usually flies under the radar a bit, and it's another PvP artifact. Now, I'm covering PvP artifacts mostly because, in general, PvE artifacts are never must pull per se. Like, if you take Daydream Joker, Exorcist Tonfa, a lot of these artifacts you can use in PvE, the 4-star artifacts, let's say Hellcutter, anything really works for PvE. If we're just talking Abyss, Raids, or Holo Trials, you have like the limited shop specific artifacts, or you just have the 3 to 4-star artifacts that are kind of general use, very powerful, right? So mostly we're looking at, besides Rod of Amaryllis, these are mostly going to be for PvP, because that's where you really want to min-max your artifacts. So let's talk Stella Harpa, guys. This one is also another PvP artifact, but I think a lot of newer to mid-game players don't really understand the potential that this thing has. Now, of course, you have to have a Soul Weaver, and of course you have to be in sort of usually a slower matchup, so maybe like a Bruiser style player, Control style player. If you're a little bit tankier, this obviously gets more value the more you get hit and over time. But with how crazy the debuff meta is at the moment, I think this artifact deserves to be a must pull. You want to grab at least one, guys, for units like Rowana, but almost any Soul Weaver, if you expect this extended fight, can make good use of it. It's just very, very strong, especially if you're expecting AoE. Unintentional hits will just clear out a lot of debilitating debuffs that could otherwise cost you the match. This one could potentially be moved down to tier 2, but I really think that I want to highlight how powerful it is to make sure you don't miss it, because that's the overall message of this video, right, guys, is to make sure you don't miss out on artifacts. Things like Abyssal Crown, Alexa's Basket, they're more obvious, but this one I think you should definitely pick up at least one of, okay? For PvP, get a Stella Harpa if you ever see it in Mystics and or Powder Shop. Last but not least, guys, in the tier 1, another Soul Weaver artifact. One I don't have, but one of my biggest regrets not picking up. Also similar to Stella Harpa, you kind of use this in a slower matchup, in a more bruiser style matchup, as you get more value if your party members have more health. That being said, Touch of Rakos is very, very, very powerful, especially in the current PvP scene. Mostly an RTA artifact. Now, there are other options instead of Touch of Rakos, since Soul Weaver artifacts are pretty strong. Things like Water's Origin is usually a strong contender. Rod of Amaryllis can also be replaced. But if you have, let's say, a Ruel on Touch of Rakos, a Rowana on Touch of Rakos, your healing potential, your defensive capabilities just go through the roof. And this is one I'm looking to pick up a lot. So don't make my mistake, guys. If Rowana comes back on the banner, try to get her and the artifact. If you see it in Mystics, if you see it in the Powder Shop, pick one up. You could potentially pick up a few because they do stack with each other. And limit breaking is always very, very nice. Alright, I think that covers what I consider artifacts you don't want to miss out on because they're very unique and their power levels are just up there. I'm going to quickly go over, guys, some brief tier 2, the next step below artifacts that I think you should also keep an eye out for, and I'll try to highlight where you would use these. Next up, guys, we have Song of Stars. If you're new to mid game, this will be, let's say you're using Furious. This is absolutely almost a must-have for him for Wyvern 13. Otherwise, you kind of want to shift towards a different style unit with more debuffs. But Song of Stars and Furious means your Wyvern 13 team is set to go with a debuff and a defense breaker. One of the best. Make sure you try to grab one if you plan on using him. Overall, it can also have some PvP potential too. So definitely look at this, mostly for Wyvern, but also can be used in PvP. This one, guys, got knocked down a ton and could potentially be also in the tier 1 above with the others. But I do think with how Charles is sort of declining overall, mostly now just arena and guild war defense, and even then, I think Elbris is super unique. So it does have a very, very must pull feature in the fact that for knights, it is the only artifact that does this, and for a few units, it's insane. Like Charles, you could also still run it on Fighter Maya, sometimes Fallen Cecilia, but people have been shifting away from that. Probably you want to get at least one, and I'm only writing it down here in the next tier just because it's sort of fallen off a little bit, but very, very strong. Make sure you get at least one, and if you have a Charles, you want to max one out if you like him a lot. After Elbris, we have Idol's Cheer. This is, oops, case sensitive. Idol's Cheer is also a, excuse me. That's right, Idol. Idol's Cheer is also a sort of very good Wyvern artifact. You could use it in PvP as well to sort of surprise your opponents in Guild Wars, Arena. Sometimes even RTA if you have multiple Soul Weavers. It can sort of give you that CR push if your opponent's not expecting it. It can really take over a game. But the best thing, I think, is if you don't have General Purgus for Wyvern 13, this is huge. This allows your DPS unit to not have to build speed, and you sort of get to double dip on having a strong Soul Weaver that also helps boost your offensive potential. Definitely grab at least one, guys. I think every player should have at least one of these somewhere, even if you don't have immediate use of it. If you already have a General Purgus and you want to grab one of the other artifacts, you have limited powder, you could probably skip, but otherwise, very, very strong artifact. Beyond that, guys, I'm just going to sort of highlight on the screen other ones that I think belong in tier 2. Things like Dignus Orb for Vivian, RNL for Assassin Koli, Shamadra Staff, you want to grab at least one because of its post-buff potential with ER and just stacking healing. You never know when you might need it for PvE or PvP. Sigurd's Scythe is a game-breaking artifact for certain units. Look at Martial Artist Ken. I've seen people run it on Little Queen Charlotte as well. Anyone that needs lifesteal, you need that Sigurd's Scythe. Very, very important. Celestine possibly should be up here, but with how strong the other Soul Weaver artifacts, I don't think it's really that great, but it's definitely not a bottom tier artifact. Holy Sacrifice has been seeing a lot of use in endgame PvP. And then I would say Durandal for certain bruisers, Fat Cat, LQC, things like that is also still very good. Could be on Valencia as well. Let me know, guys, if there's any other tier 2 artifacts I'm missing, or if you think maybe some of those mid-tier artifacts should be pushed up to tier 1. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember, this is for mid to early game players. We're not really focusing on overall power levels because all of these artifacts, or most of them, are very, very good and can be used somewhere, right? Now, I'm just going to quickly cover the last few, guys. Garbage artifacts that are usually safe to powder. Remember, always keep one of everything. But this, if we're talking about the tier 1, tier 2, Items like this are probably tier 3 or tier 4. Just not great. Deserve to be buffed. I would say another one on top of this would be like Black Hand of the Goddess. Just not super great. Melissa's artifact, the Bloody Rose, also not amazing. Make sure you keep one because you never know what's going to be buffed. Look at Alexa's basket. But yeah, overall, these are the bottom of the barrel. Not very good. Save one, powder the rest, and grab some of those other tier 1, tier 2 artifacts I talked about. All right? Guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you picked up a few things here and there on which artifacts you should definitely keep an eye out for. And yeah, let me know if you guys think anything should be moved around like I said earlier. Much love, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out, y'all.